So I appreciate James. I taught him well, didn't I? Anyway. But I appreciate James. I'm not taking any of the credit. He's a good man, and you've got some flyers there if you have questions about those kinds of things, estate planning and so forth. You know, I would encourage you to give him a call. Again, he'll take a look at your individual circumstances and give you some advice, I think, that would be beneficial to you. One of the things that, I guess, in terms of a segue from what he talked about to Memorial Park, is the concept of making all of those decisions related to all those documents and so forth, and doing all of those things out of love for your family and those that you leave behind. And that's one of the things that's consistent with what he does and what I do. We both encourage people to make decisions and to plan ahead so that the people that they love, husband, wife, children, parents, whoever it might be, are not left to deal with those things. So let me ask a question, just out of curiosity. How many people in this room already have a burial plot? Okay, so almost everyone has a burial plot. Okay, so you've got the burial plot. You also have to have what's called the opening and the closing of the grave. Okay, and that's again a traditional burial, or even if it was a cremation, you still have to have the opening and the closing of the grave. And then also you have what's called a gravestone, or a marker, or a memorial. Okay, so those are what we call the cemetery arrangements. Okay, so you have a pie like this, and you have cemetery on this side, and then you have funeral on this side. And so the cemetery is the plot, the marker, and the opening and the closing of the grave. All right, those are the three things that you need. And then the funeral, the three main things that you need is a casket or an urn if you are going to be cremated. The Catholic Church will allow for cremation as long as the body of the cremated person stays together, as I understand it. And then you have a vault, which is what the casket or the urn goes in if it's buried in the ground. And then you have the services of the funeral home. So I remember my dad, I'm from Memphis. I grew up here in Memphis, and I've been married 27 years. I have 3 kids, and my wife teaches at ECS. And I remember my dad, when I started working at Memorial Park, he asked me, he said, what if I'm driving to Atlanta and your mom is over there sleeping in the passenger side, and what happens if I look over there and she is not sleeping anymore, but she is actually expired? And this is my dad asking me this question. So he's a funny guy. So he said, what if I turned around and came back to Memorial Park and pulled up in the parking lot with your mom, you know, in the passenger side? What would you do? And I said, well, Dad, the first thing that we would do is call the cops. And you'd have some questions to answer related to my mom's passing. So don't do that, Dad. Call an ambulance or whatever. But the point of that story is that some people think, well, I've got all my arrangements, I've got all my cemetery arrangements, so I'm good to go. But there's the other side of the coin, which is the funeral arrangements. So having asked that question that I asked before, now, how many of y'all have already made all of your funeral arrangements? Okay, so less of you raise your hands. And usually that's the case. Most people are like, I'll get my plot and all that, but then they don't have their funeral arrangements. So I have told this story before. Has anybody ever heard, this is going to be I'm taking a huge risk when I ask this question, but has anybody ever heard of the movie called Talladega Nights with Ricky Bobby? And oh, yeah. And you know, Will Ferrell is Ricky Bobby. It's a crazy movie. I really wouldn't recommend it to you, but But there's a point in that movie where he is a race car driver and he's sponsored by various organizations that want to put badges on his racing suit. And one of the people that sponsors him is called McCready Funeral Home. And so he has to do a commercial for McCready Funeral Home. So he gets on the camera like this, and he kind of gives this little look like this, and he says, 98% of all of us will die at some point in our lives. That's why you should trust McCready Funeral Home. And then he goes on and on about how, body's so good, you'll want to talk to them, and things like that. But the point of it is that we all are going to die at some point in our lives, and planning ahead will take the burden off of the people that are left, and it'll make it easier on those folks. I meet with people every day who are suffering, and it's tough. Like I ran from a meeting to come over here, and a lady whose husband's going into hospice tomorrow, and she was making her funeral arrangements and her cemetery arrangements, and he is going into hospice tomorrow. I could tell you story after story. 2 weeks ago, I met with a family, 3 children in Collierville died in a house fire. You might have heard about that. They came over from India. Their parents sent them over to the United States, and they were just staying over the Christmas break with a family who offered to keep them. And just out of, the Lord's providence in the whole thing, there was a fire, the Christmas tree caught on fire or something, and the whole house burned down. Those children died. So we had to help that family get those children shipped back to India so they could be buried in their hometown where they were from. I just have so many stories of people who have gone through so many things, but the best stories are the ones where people have made prearrangements. The worst stories are the ones where people haven't made any plans, and the ones that are left behind have to make those plans. So what I wanted to do was just give you kind of the basic overview of what you need when it comes to planning ahead. At Memorial Park, let me ask this question. How many of y'all have a plot or a place at Memorial Park? One? Okay. So the rest of y'all have them, are they here in Memphis or, okay, so other cemeteries in Memphis? You can use one cemetery and one funeral home. They can be different. Okay. So you've got your plot at Memorial Park. Just for information's sake, our plot started at $18.95. That's how much a plot costs at Memorial Park. A typical marker is going to be about $895 for a granite marker. And the opening and the closing of the grave, if you have a traditional burial, is $16.95. So if you had a very basic plot and a very basic marker and the simplest opening and closing, it would be about $5,000. The least expensive casket that we have at Memorial Park is about $1,350. And the least expensive vault we have is about $1,500. And then the services of our funeral home is about $4,500. So the least expensive funeral that we offer is about $8,500. Now, having said all of that, I want to make sure that everybody understands Memorial Park has always bent over backwards to help families in every way that we can. For example, when parents have lost a child or something, we severely discount our services to serve that family in those dire circumstances. So we always encourage people to come and talk to us about whatever their needs might be. But these are kind of your typical costs. So if you just took an average situation, you'd have about $8,000, $8,500 on the funeral side and about $5,000 on the cemetery side. So it's about a $13,000, $14,000 proposition per person when it comes to, planning ahead. Planning ahead offers you the opportunity to get some incentives. Usually when you have a death occur, then you don't have any I guess, any buying power, as it were, because you're sort of over a barrel. And so it's better to plan ahead. What is that? I can't make, I say things all the time, and I work in the funeral industry, so I have to, yeah, I got to watch it, so, but anyway, one of the things I'd like you to know about Memorial Park's funerals is our funerals are what you call trust funded, which means that it's not an insurance policy. The money just goes into a trust, and it stays in that trust until the time of your passing, okay? And then the only way we can get that money out of that trust is with a death certificate. Other places in Memphis will sell you a pre-arrangement, and it'll be an insurance policy. So we offer something unique in the city. It locks in the costs, and it's also transferable, meaning that it could go to another funeral home. If you move to Colorado or something, then they could provide you the same services and merchandise that were in your pre-arrangement. So I just want to encourage everybody to really consider, and I don't want to take up all the time, but I just want to encourage everybody to consider hard and really think long and hard about planning ahead. And if you wanted to use Memorial Park to help you to do that, then I would be more than honored to help you. If you have friends or other people that you'd like to say, hey, there was a really nice guy, James, and there was a really nice guy, Allan, that came to our church, we'd be more than happy to meet with them. I actually brought a little calendar with available times that I have blocked out. So if you wanted to look at this calendar, you could put your name down. And again, it's no obligation. I actually just enjoy helping people. That's my job, is to make sure that you guys are taken care of. So I have a calendar here. And also, I want you to make sure that you pay attention to the little brochure that you have. And I know it doesn't apply in every case. A lot of you guys already have plots. But I will tell you this, if you have friends or family, feel free to give this brochure to them and let them take advantage of this, of these offers. There are 10% off of a ground package, services, merchandise, and opening and closing. There's a mausoleum discount there, okay? There's also a niche discount there, that's a very aggressive offer, 30% off of a niche. I've never seen that before, but they put that together for y'all's church and for people that you have in your parish. So this is all there for you. My email address is on the back of this, and also at your tables is a folder, and my business card is in there. There's also a little quiz. It's called the See Me Before You Need Me quiz. And I made that up, so you can. It's called, I have another one that I do as well. It's called I'd Rather Be Seen Than Viewed. But anyway, I got a few of those. So, but this is the See Me Before You Need Me quiz. And you can go through and answer those questions and kind of get an idea of where you stand and so forth. So now, having said all of that, does anyone have any specific questions about that kind of stuff?
About the casket. I was watching WKNO about 6 months ago. There was this episode of a wee basket of a casket. I don't know if it's here in the United States, but I'm sure that what I saw was in some other country. Do you know anything about that?
Well, we have caskets that range in price. We have caskets that range in the material that they're made out of. We have caskets that range in the functionality of those caskets. And we actually offer a woven wool casket, or we will offer a bamboo casket. We have those options. Some people really like the idea of being buried in something that is as natural as they can possibly.
That's what this was. It was organic or whatever.
Yes,
It goes back
exactly.
to the earth.
Yes, that's right.
And
We have,
But
we,
it didn't say, it all goes into the earth, right?
yes.
No vault, no nothing.
Right. We have something called, at Memorial Park, we're one of the only places around here that has something called eco-embalming, and where they use special embalming chemicals that are more friendly to the environment. And so what sometimes people will do, Memorial Park does require a vault, but what sometimes people will do is they'll actually place that casket directly on the ground, and then they'll turn the vault upside down and place the upside down vault on top of the casket. So there's no lid that's used. It's just like an open box that's placed over that so that the casket is touching directly to the ground, and it will go ahead and decay just as if there was nothing around it. But we have that vault there for protection because we have heavy equipment driving across there all the time, and we just can't have, there's a lot of people buried at Memorial Park, and we'd be fixing graves every day if we didn't have vaults. Now, there's probably 80,000 people buried at Memorial Park, and every single day we'd be fixing graves. As it is, the burials that we do about 900 burials a year. We have a hard enough time keeping those graves with all the rain we've had and so forth, always going back and repairing and making sure those graves are fit for the families. So that's a great question. We do have bamboo caskets, and we have eco-embalming, so you could come to Memorial Park and you could have a very green burial.
Well, I figured the worms would take care of
Yeah.
everything.
So it's a difficult subject to bring up. I know this whole thing about funeral planning, and I don't want to take up all the time. I was hoping I'd finish right about.
Can I ask you a question before you finish?
Yes.
All right, we have our, everything is planned with Memorial Park. And at that time we chose caskets, but now we would like to do cremating. Can you go back in and I mean, what's involved with redoing everything? Do we go back to?
I can probably answer that one.
Well, I know. I was gonna.
Well, I think you might be surprised. What you can do is I'd have to look specifically. How long ago did you make the arrangements?
25 years ago.
Okay.
Something like that.
There's a if you did it that long ago, they were through an insurance policy, probably an insurance company, and there's going to be a cash value to that. Okay. I don't think that you can just trade the merchandise and I don't know, Ben.
Yeah, you can.
Can you?
We can just change. It could easily be done.
It's some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just come and meet with Al, and then with Allan, and then you can just read. You might not move where the money is, but you can have a directive. I did want that, now I want this, and it should not cost you anything.
Usually we can pull it off. Is what I was getting at. There are some rare cases where you can't, but usually you can pull it off. And if there was any, I tell families today, like if someone someone today bought a funeral for $8,000, and then if they changed their mind to cremation, then they would pay what it costs for that cremation at the time that they purchased it. But then if any amount that was left over would go back to the family. So I mean, you can make changes down or up. And every circumstance is different, but it's not as bad as you think.
No, it's never too early to do a full plan. Never. I mean, people don't want to think about it. When we were, it was in the 80s when we did it, and Lou Ricasa, we worked with him, and anyway, most people our age weren't doing it, but I like to plan things, so it's like I want that done and paid for and
Yeah.
play, and that the kids don't have to think about it.
Yeah, thank you.
And Memorial Park was very good at doing all that.
Well, thank you for saying that. I got a little cash here. I'd like to give them.
I was going to do the same thing. He's my
Yeah.
brother, but see, I was so glad to get that done, and I bought a pink casket, so I was excited. I got my pink casket, and paid a little extra for that. But let me ask you this with the cemetery, because my cemetery is not Memorial Park, but my funeral is. But I wanted to, the marker that came with the package when you bought the plot, and the 4 plots and the 4, you could exchange it for the vaults and all that stuff. Well, it was a double marker. Well, the person that should have been there isn't around anymore, so I asked them, could I just make it into a single marker? And they said, no. I thought,
At-
just leave it blank, I don't care.
Oh, at that cemetery.
Yeah.
Well,
Would y'all have done that?
Well,
Would
at
you
Memorial
change it?
Park, if someone had a double marker and they wanted to turn it into a single marker, then they would just take the value, whatever they paid for that double marker, and they would just put it toward a single marker. So yeah, you can do
And it
that.
would be today's price for the single marker.
Yeah,
That's what it
probably
would be.
so.
Well, why wouldn't it be the same thing with the cremation then? If you bought a burial in the casket and the vault and everything, and the burial for the cremation is cheaper.
Yeah, it would
but-
be.
But it would have been back then.
Yeah, you
Now,
got
the
it.
price today would be a lot more than it was then.
Right. Yeah, if you wait a long time, then you may not net out the same way that you would have.
I'm sure that's
But
I don't know why they wouldn't swap,
why. It would-
unless they've already.
Bring it to Allan,
There's-
he'll look at it.
there's only a few cases, like a long time ago, I hate to take any more time, but a long time ago, there was Memphis Funeral Home. And they had a big inn in a stained glass window, and it stood for National Burial Insurance Company. And they were in cahoots. In other words, they owned, or one of them owned the other, or the same ownership, right? Well, the government came along and said, you can't have the funeral home and the insurance company owned by the same people, so they made them split, okay? So National Burial Insurance, that people have these little small things, you used to pay a dime a day or a dime a month or whatever it was. Memphis Funeral Home would honor those for a long time. But back in the 80s, they stopped honoring those because there was no money left in the insurance company. So there were a couple of funeral homes that kept honoring those, but for the most part, no one really honors those anymore. You still have the cash value associated with them, but those aren't any good anymore if you have one of those.
But if we had it all planned and all paid for, then regardless of what the cost is today, it's covered.
It's covered and locked in. Mhm. So there's a few things about, I was reading something that the Father gave me, and there's a few things about planning a Catholic service in particular, and I want to listen to what he has to say about that.